Pete, welcome back. We're looking ahead again, had another week, potential uncertainty. We've seen plenty of activity, certainly last week with gold coming off. We'd called it up for a number of weeks now. It came off. We're looking at vaccine hopes. Putin comes out and says, hey, we've got a vaccine. Doesn't seem to have tested it very, very fast, so there's creating some scepticism in the markets. In your view, through your lens, what are we seeing?
We did see that sell-off, and good morning, Will. A couple of things. First off, it was at $20.70, $20.75. It got massively hit to the downside to $18.80. So you can imagine that $200 wipeout. Then it bounced within that afternoon of trade. After hitting at $18.80, it bounced to $19.20, $19.30 in trade. Back at $19.50 now. Looks as though at the moment that it seems to be identifying what if it's in a channel or we're going to see another breakout to the upside. There's a degree of uncertainty, but I think the overall trend is certainly going to be stronger from here.
Pete, talking now about the dollar and the yen. Dollar and yen's climbing alongside global yields.
Well, when you're looking at it, Will, when you're thinking about that yen, if you look at the chart in itself, the spread between the 10-year US Japanese bond on the left-hand side scale and the US Treasury yield on the in that sense, and in the green, and then the US dollar yen in the right-hand scale. So the yen has bounced quite strongly. It's a fairly strong move, but the trade-off's going to be, we think that US dollar yield, as far as the bond market, is going to probably cause a little bit of a hiccup. It's fully grown at the moment, that Japanese yen versus US dollar. There's a chance you could see a little bit of a reversal. So traders are looking at it saying, where do we go from here?
August 10 here, the dotted line. The day that Putin comes out, Russia says vaccine is ready. Really?
Really. And, that really is that is a mindset that has the world found the saviour, or is it just a degree of propaganda? I think it's very much a wait and see. But it certainly hit the markets very, very hard, and it was a wake-up call from a risk side to create, we have got a solution, and Russia's come to the answer.
Talking about stocks. Stocks are undeterred by political stalemate, but the longer this impasse lasts, the greater the risks. Brief me.
Well, when you're looking at the S&P, we've had a dramatic move, as you can see in the yellow on that graph, from March 2020 sell-off to nearly 2,200 points. It's put on the best part of 1,100 to 1,200 points in that short 4.5 months. So it's been dramatic. Also, at the same time, you've seen a big sell-off as far as US dollar index. So the US dollar index is in the blue, and that's inverted, so it's 104 down the bottom on the left-hand side, nearly now at around about 93 on the right-hand side. In the same measure, you've seen that dramatic uptick, stimulus-led. We understand it's twice the horsepower as far as the Lehman crash, in the sense of US stimulus. So massive stimulus. What has that done? Underpinned equity markets globally. Second point is it's the most stimulus that we've seen in 75 years by the Fed since World War II. So that's the indication how massive this is over that last 75-year window.
So really what we're seeing here is policymakers are seriously concerned.
Very much concerned, and that's been demonstrated by nearly to the point of negative interest rates, stimulus from central bankers across the globe. Have a look at the Australian situation, look at the US, look at Europe, and no, the indecision is what's happening over the next matter of months. Do we see an uptick as far as coronavirus? Do we see more deaths? And those numbers leading into Spain and the Eurozone are certainly very, very concerning.
Probably fair to say that Trump really needs the farmers' vote, right? So we really need agriculture to really pick up and do some work.
Yeah, we certainly do, and we need those big purchases from China as well, because they've got that comes down to a trade negotiation, and that was all in that phase 1 deal. So I noticed that the negotiators that were supposedly going to meet over the weekend, they've postponed that meeting. So where does that trend over the next matter of days? So there is a lot of moving cards to this one, and we've just got to wait and see how it all
markets
comes.
to watch, signals to look for, and still trading opportunities.
Absolutely. US dollar, I keep on looking at that. I keep on looking at the equity markets. I don't see any fast money really in crude oil. It's very much range bound between that $45 to $40 channel. And until we see conviction, and I think that's what a trader needs to look at. Conviction tells me it's actually trending higher or trending lower. It's supported by technical analysis. You're talking about the fundamentals. So at the moment, I don't see that. I see other opportunities for fast money.
If we look at the contagion, the pandemic, it's encompassed all of our lives. Is it slowing? Is it accelerating? Where are we?
You have a look at the red there, Will, and you can see that there has been a turnaround as far as new daily infections per million inhabitants, and that's a 7-day moving average. So there's the US in red, and it's looking as though it's, let's hope that as it rolls further into August that we get better numbers. But I think the great concern there is Spain and some of those other nations, as we highlighted last week, France and Belgium. Germany's rising, but not to the same sort of magnitude as what we're seeing in Spain there. That's very, very concerning, and it's very much a wait and see over that European summer.
Pete, wrapping up today's brief, let's talk about gold. We've called it up for a number of weeks now. It had its first weekly loss since June after its big plunge.
I still think that the overall theme is going to be onwards and upwards, Will. There's no chance that it's going to be a $1,400 trade in the short term like we saw in March. The momentum's there, silver as well, all in that inflation side, what's happening as far as yields, and of course the coronavirus and impacts. And where does President Trump play as far as nearly 3.5 months out from an election? So there's the great unknown.
Warren Buffett typically makes headlines when he buys a coffee, buys a Coke, and perhaps even puts on an event. In this week, he's gone sour on banks, and he likes gold.
Yep. He's gold miners, and he sees the big picture. So when you've got an investor like that that's putting his hard-earned behind it, it demonstrates the fragility as far as global markets.
Peter McGuire, CEO Australia, XM.com.
Thank you, Will.